What's up, Terriers? Welcome back to our first podcast episode of the year. My name's Bianca.
I'm Harry.
I'm Fidak.
And I'm Ariana.
And before we get into it, we're just going to recap really quick. We recently had Rev Week, we had our whole rally, we had homecoming.
Super fun.
Super fun.
A lot of work, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this episode, we will be talking about the Myers Briggs Personality Test, and we're going to be reviewing that with our AP Psychology teacher here at RHS, Mrs. Dewey, as well as the Psych Club president, Hugh Cockeram. So let's jump right into it.
All right, so basically, the Myers Briggs Personality Test is like an introspective self report questionnaire, and it results in one of 16 personalities you can get. And I got the debater, which is ENTP for all the technical people out there. And yeah, basically, some of my strengths, according to this, are I'm knowledgeable and a quick thinker, which I don't know, that's debatable. And one of my weaknesses. Yeah, well, knowledgeable maybe, but quick thinker. Sometimes I'm a little slow on the draw, so it's like, who knows? But I'm very argumentative, intolerant, and insensitive. And I think those are pretty harsh words. It's like
Coming
man,
after you.
Yeah, no, that kind of hurts a little bit. So I don't know about those.
What'd you get, Ariana?
I got the campaigner, which is ENFP. And basically, some of the strengths include personable, curious, perceptive, enthusiastic. And I feel like those are pretty accurate. I am an extrovert and I love talking to people and getting to know new people. So I feel like my strengths are accurate, but some of my weaknesses I didn't feel were accurate. One of them was unorganized, and I feel like I'm a pretty organized person.
Mm-hmm.
But I did feel that unfocused can sometimes be true, and people pleasing. That is definitely a trait that is a weakness.
What about you, Bianca?
So I got the mediator, which is INFP, which is basically the introverted type that Ari got. So some of my strengths and weaknesses, let's start with strengths. Start with a good note. So I'm apparently very empathetic, which I honestly think is very true. Generous, open-minded, creative, speaks the truth, and passionate. And my weaknesses are pretty on point as well. I can be unrealistic, self-isolating, unfocused, emotionally vulnerable, desperate to people pleasing.
This is getting sad.
No, I promise there's the same amount of strengths and weaknesses.
ENTJs, which is the personality type that I have. So I'll start with my weaknesses. Those include being stubborn, intolerant, impatient, and cold or ruthless. Which I guess I'll be fair and say some of those are true. I can be impatient at times. I think that just kind of plays into one of my strengths, which is being a bit more realistic. Though that can be arguable, but some of the other strengths include being efficient, energetic, strong-willed, and being a strategic thinker. And I feel like I can relate to those quite a bit.
I think our strengths all fit us really well. Only thing I'd have to say is that when we take the test multiple times, some of our results change. I think that's one of the most interesting parts because I remember Harry discussing a while back that. What'd you discuss, Harry?
Oh, I just pretty much, whenever I take it, I always get the debater, which is weird because everyone else I know gets different ones. So I guess I'm just dead set on arguing all the time.
I feel like some people are consistent while others obviously change over time. I think that's one of the best parts of life, adapting and changing as you get older.
I think inconsistency is like a very normal thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Personality-wise, like people change and there's nothing you can do to help that.
I think because of that, that's why we have to take it with a grain of salt, you know?
Exactly. And, I know Hugh Cockeram, our next interview, has some very, strong opinions about this stuff. I feel like he doesn't really like buy into it as much. So we have to get a little transition and then, let's welcome Hugh and get into his interview.
We are here with Psych Club President and Senior Hugh Cockeram, who also took the Myers Briggs Personality Test, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his results and what he thinks about the test.
Yeah, so I got ENFP, which is known as like the campaigner or the debater, I think. I think the test is reliable in the fact that basically it narrows you down to like an extrovert or an introvert. Definitely one of my main strong points was the fact that I was an extrovert, and that's like one of the things I like to focus on the most, was that like I'm energized by my time with others. But I also feel kind of like intuitive, so like I can get really like down to the nitty gritty of like ideas and concepts and that type of stuff. But from there on out, it kind of gets like more complex, or it doesn't really fit all of my traits. So like it says that I prioritize people and emotions, and I would say that I'm not the most friendly person. I mean, I still do care about others, but it's not like one of my main,
I get that. So you talked a little bit about the ink blot test that you did at one of your psych club meetings. How does that like
differ.
or how does it like, is it kind of the same as Myers Briggs, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the ink blot test, which is known as the Rorschach test, I think that's how you pronounce it. That one's like an emotional / perceptive type of test. So it's like they present an ink blot in front of you, and you kind of really just tell them what you're looking at. Everyone's going to say something different. Whereas the Myers Briggs one is more like an algorithm, like they have specific things that you can be. But I don't necessarily think that that's, correct, because I definitely don't align with all of my traits, but I think it does narrow down like who you are.
I'd say like the ink blot is definitely more subjective, whereas like the Myers Briggs test is more like we're trying to categorize you into these boxes per se based on your responses.
Those tests are never like they would never go up against each other, a different type of test, but you are right, because like the ink blot test is like what you're feeling, why you're feeling it.
So speaking on like the personality test topic, our podcast like theme this month is about like self-image and how we perceive ourselves. So for me, when I took the test, I'd taken it before, and the first time I took it, I got ENTJ. And reading those results, I felt like, yeah, I really align with the stuff that it's saying. Like I was 50% extrovert, 50% introvert, and I was like, yeah, this is who I am. So when we retook it this time and I got something else, I was like, I almost had like an identity crisis. I was like, this is not who I am. Like, it can't tell me who I am, even though I relied so heavily on my first results. Do you think you feel the same way, Ari? Because you said that your results have changed.
Yeah, they did change, but I think the difference between all of us is that we stayed in the same category, but I feel like some of us changed more than others. Mine was pretty much the same. I mean, a couple of them weren't the same, but I think a lot of what we said was that depending on how you feel that day, your results may shift or change.
Yeah.
But do you feel like your personal individual perception of yourself changed?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't recommend others to like rely on this test and be like, oh, I got this result on the Myers-Briggs, so I'm this, because you're never, going to fall in every single category.
Right.
Also on the test, it has like a spectrum of answers. So it's like, I like to be social with friends, and then strongly disagree, like disagree, slightly, middle, and then same on the other side with agree. So even like checking slightly disagree and disagree, that can change your whole end result.
Yeah.
So I don't think people should, like use this as a basis for who they are. Like, this is what my personality says, so I have to abide by these traits.
For you, was there anything where you were like, this is not accurate?
Yeah, so I got ENFP, the third letter standing for feeling. And one of the main kind of traits is like prioritizing people and emotions. And while I'm not like some, like, I don't have a heart, I do, but I would say like,
Not overly emotional.
Yeah. I don't rely on my emotions as much as others do. Some are even like less emotional than me, but I don't think I prioritize emotion. I mean, I still love people, and I like always will.
I think that makes you a rational person.
Yeah, and I do prioritize people sometimes, but oftentimes like I will put myself first, because I'm looking out for myself after all. But obviously, I'm not gonna ignore everyone around
I
me.
feel like that's in human nature.
Yeah.
What about you, Ari? Is there anything?
For me, they were really minor like characteristics that were listed, but one of them was unorganized, and I feel that is completely wrong, because I keep a calendar and a list. I keep a to-do list, a homework list. So I feel like I'm a very organized person. But I mean, that's a really minor, characteristic assumption about me. So I didn't really take it, I took it with a grain of salt. So, yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much, Hugh. Is there anything you'd like to plug for Psych Club?
Yeah, I can do a little shameless promotion since I'm on the podcast again. But Psych Club does meet every other Tuesday. We meet in room 423, which is Miss Dewey's room.
All right, guys, and we are back, and we have a special guest for you today, and we have Mrs. Dewey, our AP Psych teacher, as well as Honors English.
Yeah, hi you guys. How are you?
We're okay. We're doing okay.
Yeah, excited, this is a really interesting theme for me. We haven't really done themes with the podcast before.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm excited. It's like something new. So, yeah, so basically, as you guys remember, we were talking about the Myers Briggs Personality Test. Just a little rundown. I got the debater, and for my people who are fancy with it out there, that's extroverted, intuitive thinking, and prospecting. So, ENTP. So, yeah, there's some associations we made with that, but yeah, it's an interesting one.
I remember I got INFP, which is the mediator. And what about you, Mrs. Dewey?
Well, my type is INFJ, and that's the advocate.
Wow. Okay.
And just be aware though that like the names, the mediator, the advocate, those are tied pretty much to the 16 personalities website.
Right.
They're not really Myers-Briggs terms.
So it's more the variables?
Yes.
Okay.
That's interesting, yeah. And I remember, I think you were saying something in class that you have the rarest personality that people get, right?
Yes.
Am I reading that right?
Yes. INFJ, according to Myers-Briggs, is about 2 to 3% of the population.
Wow.
Okay.
So very, very limited number. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about my
Oh, yeah,
type?
of course.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. So INFJs are very much driven by their values, right? And sometimes we can be a little bit too idealistic, which, can lead to kind of dreamy thinking. We very much value our relationships and put those first in our decision making. So Bianca, you were INFP. So the P part would indicate that you feel more comfortable with kind of improvising, going with the flow. But like the J part is very much into planning and having, all our ducks in a row.
Kind of like type A almost.
Yeah, we have a
Gotcha.
tendency to be that way. So what was your letter, your final letter?
I think it was J was the last one.
J.
Let me
So
double check. Oh no, P actually. I was
P.
completely wrong.
So you also, Harry, would be kind of more comfortable, according to Myers-Briggs, with, just improvising and like to kind of see how things evolve naturally. Whereas a J is like totally.
Yeah, have it down in a minute, have the spreadsheets.
Exactly right.
That's interesting.
The most interesting part, I think, is the part about introversion and extroversion. Right? And remember that Myers-Briggs based their personality types on the work of Carl Jung, who was the Swiss psychologist and psychiatrist. And we're going to talk about this next semester, Harry.
Oh, wow.
Right? But the biggest problem with Myers-Briggs, if I can just segue a little bit,
Oh, yeah, go
or
for it.
digress, is that it's based on theories that are not testable. So, Harry, you remember, as we discussed about research, if you can't test your theory, you really don't have much to go on, and you can't study whatever it is scientifically. And that's the biggest argument against Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like we see that argument in so many other aspects of life as well. It's not to get too touchy, but I feel like a lot of people can say that about a lot of opponents of religion can also say that, where it's we can't really prove anything. So that's interesting to see this problem being morphed into more than one thing. It brings up a little philosophical question of how important faith is.
Yeah. Additionally, we were just discussing this as a group.
how it's not necessarily accurate 100% of the time. Like there's
No.
always one thing that's out of place. Like for me, I believe I'm more of a planner. I have to have my calendar set. I have to have an agenda, everything you could think of.
Mhm.
And it describes more of as like, oh, let's be spontaneous and go with the flow and see what happens. But that just gives me anxiety just thinking about that. And Harry would know that from our like
Yeah.
previous projects too.
Well, that is another criticism
Mhm.
of Myers-Briggs, is that there is a lot of vagueness
Yeah.
to the theory. And I think the statistic in one study was that about 50% of the people that took Myers-Briggs did not find it was accurate,
Oh, wow.
or it was not an accurate way to describe them, is what they felt.
Huh.
But I'm going to jump back to something I was saying just a few minutes
Mhm.
ago about what many people find to be the most interesting are the perspectives on introversion and extroversion. Because we tend to think in popular culture of introverts as being withdrawn or kind of like loners.
Uh-huh.
I'm an I and you're an I,
Right.
but you're an E,
Yeah.
right? So really, Carl Jung and Myers-Briggs, the mother and daughter team that came up with this test, saw introversion differently. And one way to look at introversion and extroversion is how you feel at the end of the day.
Oh, really?
Like when you're really tired. This is like
Uh-huh.
a little litmus test. So this is one way to look at it. Like when you're done with school for the day and you're kind of like tired, right?
Right.
Would you rather be with people or would you rather have alone time?
Oh,
Ooh,
okay,
that's
that
so
makes
interesting.
sense.
So it's sort of like, how do you recharge?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
And
okay.
so introverts love people, right?
Mhm.
But we kind of value our alone time.
Right.
Whereas an extrovert like you, Harry,
Yeah.
when you're done with school, you probably want to hang out with a few friends. Is that accurate?
It is, and luckily I kind of get that through soccer. It's the days I have off. I find myself almost more drained by not having anything to do because just sitting in my room or playing video games by myself just gets so draining after a while. I can't find like that inner time. I need to be with people. So yeah,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
never thought about that.
Bianca, for you then, do you find like you need your alone time at the end of the day?
I definitely think so. I think once school's over, I'm looking forward to being home, and it's only like those few exceptions with either my family or very, very close friends that I find myself recharging. Otherwise, I have to be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah.
I've always thought just like either social butterfly or antisocial.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
I've always thought I was like somewhere in the middle. I'm not sure if it's called this, like an ambivert, I believe it's called.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that term.
Uh-huh. And I've always thought it was somewhere around there, but now considering how we recharge, and I've definitely found myself more of an introvert.
Right. And remember, this is a theory.
Right.
That's true.
But this is something that lots of people spark to because
Mhm.
we can see ourselves
Yeah.
in that, right? So I'm an introvert, and when we talk about personality, I'll mention that to students, and they're like, "What?" Because I talk to people all day long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But when I go home, I just want to sit and play with my dog a little bit,
Aw.
and
Oh.
give me about half an hour, and then I'm good to go again.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to kind of wrap things up, in your opinion, what is like the importance, the significance of this test? Is it something that people should take really literally, or is it something that's kind of fluctuates as more fun almost?
This is definitely in the fun category, right? And some psychologists say it's like astrology, that it's kind of just something that we can see as entertainment. But I personally think there's a little bit more to it than that, because we are talking about personality traits.
Right.
Now, there are measures today that are used in personality inventories, and we'll talk about that next semester, Harry.
Yeah, I'm getting excited.
Yeah, but it's very interesting, and thinking about ourselves is always, and others, about our personalities. It's always intriguing to me anyway, and I think You guys too.
Yeah,
so-
definitely.
Yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah.
Because we were discussing as well as a group earlier, and a lot of us were like, should we take this with a grain of salt or should we take this absolutely seriously? And one of us, I remember, was actually saying that she feels like she has like an identity crisis when she gets a different result because she's found so much comfort in the previous one.
Hmm.
So I think, like you said, it's not something necessarily true, but it is very intriguing to just read in general.
Well, thank you for thinking of me and
Mhm.
including
Oh,
me. It
of
was really
course.
fun.
We
Yeah.
had so much fun,
Yeah,
and
so-
we're so thankful that you were able to attend. We
Exactly.
learned
Perfect
so
way to
much.
wrap it up.
Aw.
We can't wait to keep working with RHS kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, but we hope you all have a safe and amazing winter break. And that you
Yeah,
guys
take the time to relax, get away from the
Yeah.
screens a little bit, go for a run, go for a jog, a walk even.
All right. Have an amazing break, guys.
Thank you guys.